Next question on this left side.
I was wondering, what's the recommended amount of dedicated RAM I should have to a server?
Honestly, I find it very hard to think from the perspective of a central banker because I don't know what they think about. I've never been to a central bank. I don't know what their mandate really tells them. I don't know how their offices are like. So I don't know what they actually care about. It's their problem to figure out, and I'm not going to answer a question that I'm not qualified to answer.
Welcome to CoinSpice Live. I am your host, Peter Ryan. We have a great show for you tonight. We got John Dantoni of The Block talking to us about crypto data and research and everything in between. We also are talking about Trump tweeting and Bitcoin. What does it all mean? We're also going to dive into a tale between two Bitcoin conferences. What does it say about communities and technology coming together and how those are emulated and visualized in these gatherings? So we're going to jump into that, guys. Make sure, above all else, smash that subscribe button, go into our description, hit us up on Twitter, on Telegram, on our email newsletter. Make sure that you are getting CoinSpice as much as possible in your feed. You can also hit us up at tipbitcoin.cash, throw a little tip, get your message up there, make sure that you're a part of the show. I see everybody in the chat hanging out. Lots of cool folks over there. Let me get some peppers. We see some peppers, guys. I want to make sure everyone's alive and spicy. So yeah, that's our show tonight, guys. We're going to jump into it with the first story of the show. We have our lovely CoinSpice site, and we have BTC Maximalists meet in Riga, Latvia, urge new ironic tone, a tale of two Bitcoin conferences. So we have an article here. I encourage everybody to go over to our site, check it out, and make sure that you read up on all the juicy details there. But what this is exemplifying is that there were two conferences within this 2-week time span. You had the Townsville, Australia Bitcoin Cash City conference that was going down, making people excited. And then you had the Riga, Latvia conference that all the Bitcoin maximalists were checking out, doing their talks, doing their thing. And we really had a dichotomy showing the comparison and the contrast between these two. And what is interesting is that what you did see was there was a solidification, a consolidation of this inner circle, this cultish sort of behavior going on in Riga with their conference, where you saw a different tone. You almost the opposite, the inverse of inner circleification. It was, how do we expand? How do we talk practically? How do we get out there and evangelize to people that aren't totally speaking our language, that understand that this is a tool, that this is something to help people, not a pseudo religion, a thing that you must give up all the regularities of your life to sort of read certain texts and run certain nodes and learn all this technology stuff. So there was certainly a contrast there. There was certainly also in the presentations that were going on, you had people talking about economics. We had our friend of the show, Seyfedina Moose, talking in our cold open about how he doesn't know anything about central banks, but he is the primary author when it comes to the Bitcoin standard, and the subtitle of that is about central banking. So you have these people opining on economic theory, on what they think Bitcoin needs to be, and really trying to get into all of this philosophizing about what the native asset of Bitcoin means. Like, is it money? Is it a hedge? Is it equivalent to gold? So all these things are going on, and you saw in the presentations at the Bitcoin Cash City conference, how do we bring this to merchants? How do we create privacy tools that are better? How do we think about this from the human perspective? And I think that was really interesting, and perhaps even the things that were not so visible from a stage on a conference, but sort of the on the ground mucking it up. What you did see was the insular kind of whatever cave that they were holding the Riga conference in. That was all about who the people were in Bitcoin there. Whereas one of the shining things that came out of the Bitcoin Cash City conference was the community that surrounded it. Was that you could spend Bitcoin Cash almost at every shop, at every meal, your transportation, your lodging, everything could be utilized using cryptocurrency. So this was probably one of the most interesting parts I saw, was that the subtext, the surrounding environment played a part in describing what these two communities represented. And if you were keen enough to observe each one, you would notice that one was about how do we use a tool to make people's lives better, that is using this thing that everyone galvanized around, P2P cash, to make a difference, to make an impact. And then you had on this side a cult. So, that's where we are with that, guys. I recommend everybody check out our site. Make sure to read the full details there. Lots of good, juicy bits. And to emphasize that point again, what makes a community, how do we define that? How do we think about, what is Bitcoin? What is BTC? What is BCH? Like, what does it all mean? What is the specifics of it? Here's a little clip to emphasize that. We'll be right back. All right, guys, so Bitcoin Cash, it's us. That's what it is. It can be whatever you want as long as you're pursuing that practical goal of making an impact there. So anyway, guys, we're moving on. Have you seen the tweets that Trump was doing about the Fed, the boneheads, interest rates, this, that, the other thing, talking about we have to go below zero. Ouch! Well, CoinSpice is going to come at you with a little explainer of why this is interesting for Bitcoin. Let's roll that.
But if I get elected president, I will bring it back bigger and better and stronger than ever before.
Obviously, it's a hack move to dunk on Trump. I think a better tact for Bitcoiners to take, those concerned about bringing peer-to-peer electronic cash to the world, is to view Trump as really what he's become, which is the mechanism for tearing down that veneer, a very dangerous civic religion that's been erected to venerate and almost worship politicians, government institutions, government offices. And I think his latest sets of tweets against his own chair of the Federal Reserve, his own nominee, Jay Powell, and going against his own central banker, hectoring him, badgering him, cajoling him to slam interest rates, to bring them down almost to negative, calling he and his colleagues, Powell and his board of governors, boneheads. It's awesome, because what is happening is a huge cognitive dissonance is roiling up in people who would normally just kind of go along with a president or with a Federal Reserve, and it's asking them to consider questions that perhaps they may have never before. And I think it really can go to the heart of why it's so important to divorce the state from money. I encourage you to get out and read those tweets, to pass them along, and to start that discussion. I think you may be surprised by how many people will suddenly understand the Bitcoin argument.
All right, we are back. We just heard from our man, C. Edward Kelso, talking to about what's going on with Trump tweets and Bitcoin. Next up, guys, I want to see what you're doing in the chat. We got some fantastic peppers going around. Oh, we have Vin Armani saying Kelso is a Chad. Couldn't agree more. There we go. There we go. Throw those peppers up. So, yeah, guys, we have a great show. We went through our first topics, and now we have our interview of the night. We have John Dantoni, contributor at The Block. He came on to talk about research, data, how we should think about that, if there's better ways to, kind of crunch the numbers, to kind of have more of a contextual basis for not just taking everything at face value and getting into the weeds a little bit. So this is a fantastic conversation, and I want to make sure everybody jumps in. If you feel like you want to make a comment, throw a tip at tipbitcoin.cash, get your question up there, let everybody know that you are participating in the show. So without further ado, guys, let's jump into it. Welcome. We are here with John Dantoni. How you doing?
Not too bad, man. How about yourself?
I am doing real good. We're here today to talk about crypto data, research, media, what this atmosphere is like, and what your background in the space is. So why don't you go and introduce yourself?
So my name is John Dantoni. For the past 8 months, I've been contributing as research over at The Block Crypto. Before that, I was doing some contributions over at Mazzari. And then before that, it's kind of just on my own, doing my own work, shit posting on Twitter, along those type of lines.
Cool. So what got you interested in crypto? What was the moment that clicked?
The moment?
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny, actually. It started all off Twitter. So back around, this was probably around like 2013. I would say I was like a stereotypical college kid, like pissed off at the world, and I was diving into like libertarian type books and reading all that. And then on just Twitter, I was seeing, I had followed like this bot called TrutherBot, and he would like periodically tweet about the price of Bitcoin. So it would be like, the price of Bitcoin, $55, the price of Bitcoin, $250, price of Bitcoin, $350. And then eventually I was like, well, okay, what the fuck is this thing? So then I kind of just, dived into that, started watching videos and reading up on it, and kind of mingled with, the libertarian stuff and, my feelings at the time. So it kind of just made sense to me, and never haven't turned back since then.
Great. And do you find yourself holding on to a lot of the original assumptions that you made when you were first getting in, or have you evolved, or, how has your development gone?
It's hard to say. For me personally, I feel like my thoughts are always changing. Like one day I'll be thinking like I'm this, and clearly some things and thoughts have changed around. Whether we're talking Bitcoin or the ecosystem as a whole. When you're just looking back, it's just like, wow, like I can't even believe it's been like 6 years or however it's been. But I would say like most of my beliefs and thoughts are still the same. I guess it depends on if you'd have to ask me like a particular question per se to be like, for me to, to be like, I don't know.
Okay. So let's start with this. Is
Put me on the spot
Bitcoin
here.
the one and only true coin?
Now, what do you mean in terms of like different chains or like the forks, or do you mean like in general?
In general, is this really an industry of Bitcoin, or is this an industry of crypto?
So my personal opinion is right now here, Bitcoin is the one. But I don't think of Bitcoin as like this, this holy thing. I think odds are that Bitcoin is the one, but I don't like to ever, with anything in general, speak in absolutes. So, I'm not going to sit here and say that Bitcoin's the one in 40 years. I don't even know what the hell is going to happen in 5 years, let alone, if I had to put my money on something, I would have Bitcoin as the one. But, if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think this is interesting because as the industry has certainly developed, everyone can acknowledge the fact that there has been a explosion of coins that are obviously not up to snuff, that are largely scams or
Yeah, of course.
or just brain farts that disappear overnight, whether they were nefarious or not. But I guess really it's sort of a misnomer to try to like paint probably altcoins in that same light, when probably what most people are considering sort of the difference between Bitcoin and altcoins, they're talking about large caps. They're really talking about, Bitcoin versus Ethereum, Dash, Monero, Zcash, all these coins that definitely have communities, that definitely have technicals that support them. And so that's really the question. And it seems that as we move down the road here, there really is the question of, should sort of the industry concentrate on developing resources, whether that's media, that's research, that's support infrastructure and businesses around just Bitcoin, or is the industry larger, and is there services that can be more agnostic and do cross-chain applications? So I think this is sort of like the question that we get to as sort of, I think everyone came into, especially if you got in like before a lot of this altcoinism happening, it was very easy to consider Bitcoin the only option 100%. On the table. Yeah, and now we're here, and it appears that there are these other legitimate options. So what is your take on, if we were to put aside, the obvious cases of altcoins that aren't going to work out, like when you look at some of the large cap altcoins, is there a role for them, like a Decred, like a Monero?
I think it's a fair point. I mean, the one thing I don't like personally, even if I don't even personally believe in these projects per se, like you'll see a lot of people, like they'll automatically paint all chains as like, generally it's a scam, and that everyone's just trying to scam you. And I mean, the one thing I will say is, whether you want to call it altcoins, shit coins, whatever, the shit coins of 2019 there are definitely some that are higher quality than the shit coins back in 2013, when you got like Feather Coin and Nautilus Coin. And, I mean, now I'm not to say, whether these projects are, going to be successful on their own, but, I don't think you can just paint everything with the same brush. Then in terms of like research applied to this, like, I don't think you need to, like, you can be a Bitcoin maximalist. You can think Bitcoin is the only thing that matters, and that's what you believe. But you can still do research on a lot of these other chains, which is, and this was going to be going on my point in just like research in general, like, because you'll hear some hardline Bitcoiners say, "Oh, research, it's not important. All that matters is Bitcoin. You don't need to follow any of this. It's all noise." But to me, that's not a okay answer, because there is value in these other chains, and I can apply research to them and tell you what's going on. I don't have to believe in Tezos to go on the Tezos blockchain and then finding Coinbase's address and then calculating how much they're making in revenue off staking, and that's, something that people want to know. It's, to me, an important question. Like, what revenue are they making on this service? Is this service needed? Are they going to pull it? Well, you do research, and it's the same thing. Like, you don't have to think that, you can have your, disputes over, BNB, Binance Coin, but you can still, you can calculate what their trading fees are, what their revenue are. Same applies to Leo, so you don't have to believe in these coins intrinsically, but you can still do research on them and find, answers that some people want to know, so that would be part of my answer on that.
Yeah, I think you put the right light on it. I mean, whether you believe totally in Bitcoin or not, these are experiments that are testing a lot of different hypotheses that are out there. And so, for instance, we have the ability on BTC to create like Omni tokens like Tether, or there's going to be more utilization with side chains that are coming out in the future. The ability to learn from the experiments that happened like on ETH with all the token development or other blockchains, that's incredibly valuable to understand. Like, one, I mean, I don't think anyone had a conception of like what the legal environment was going to be for these types of things. I mean, let alone just creating your own new blockchain, but putting these things out there as whether they were utility or they're security tokens. There was so much fact finding that went on. Obviously, a lot of bad facts were found, but to the degree that like how legally you should set that up, it's probably helpful to research that. Like, what are the distributions that are healthy? What are the ways that the coins get moved around? How they should be locked up? So this is this is why the research is definitely valuable. So I would like to get your take on sort of like, where do you see the crypto data and research area right now?
Right now, I mean, I would say, obviously I'm going to say like, Block's doing it pretty well. But in terms of, I think like every day, like just things are getting like better, like I see with some companies in terms of like pulling data and analytics together, and like it's getting better and better. And I think like as you will see, or I would say within the next year or two, probably a year, like you're going to see, I think some of the data and some of these metrics we're going to have is going to be even better. But I don't know, in terms of, was there anything like specific you were, in terms of that question? Like,
sure. Like we can get more specific. Like, I think you're right. Like, we've never had more accessibility to data, to verify, to fact check. I think what maybe I want to clue in on is, okay, now we have the pile of data. We also have the people that are now explaining the data to a lot of the people that aren't doing the due diligence themselves. And so how do we think about the explanations of what this data means? And I think also a next step of, when you start to see a lot of these sort of adjusted, these ratios, these sort of convoluted calculations that go on, how does that start to play in when we're getting away farther from the raw numbers and we're getting into more sort of opinionated discussion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my personal opinion on that is like, with anything, you have to like for me personally, like when I try to do my data, like I try not to do like those type of metrics, or I try to just things that aren't considered, things that people don't like, dispute over, where, it's agreed upon that these are, good data points. And that's what I'll normally use. And then just kind of tell you what the data says, rather than trying to, because that's the thing, like with a lot of these metrics, like they're, it's kind of a lot of theory, and, so in my opinion, it's better to kind of stay away from that. But I mean, obviously people want to develop more of those, but that would be my like main opinion on that. But
sure.
I don't know. What do you think?
I think that there's definitely some fanciness that perhaps is going on with some of the data that is giving way to perhaps like a misreading. I have a background in this as well, and like I have been kind of piecing through how you look at crypto data, and especially, this is the hardest part of it all, how do you efficiently and effectively compare and contrast different blockchains? Because not only are there different structures and incentive models and economics around each one and technicals, the use cases are different. So like, for instance, if you have,
yeah, I see what you're saying.
If you have Bitcoin, which is now predominantly seen as an asset that you hold for the long term, and it's a saving mechanism. And then you have something like EOS, which is like, there's no fees and it's supposed to be high throughput. Like, how do you actually effectively compare what could appear to be like, just transaction count? Like, that seems comparable, but if the use cases are different, that's kind of problematic to actually make that a measuring stick.
Or like, say something with Ethereum, do you, like when we're talking about the transaction volume, the amount of money that's being transacted on Bitcoin, and we want to compare it to Ethereum, do we just count what's on Ethereum, or do we count everything that's built on Ethereum? Do you count DAI? Do you count all these other things? So I feel like you can kind of go all day on that. But then, and then like, then the other issue is many of these metrics are obviously very gameable, which, I would hope most people know by now. But, that's when you see, the top dApps and they're on EOS, there's a reason, because it costs like there's no cost to like make these transactions, and it's easily gameable to make it seem like, unless I'm, wrong here, and maybe, I don't know, maybe there is some EOS game that people love. I doubt it, but.
Yeah, I think it is a given that so much of this is gameable that there's inorganic and there's organic activity that's happening on all the chains that you really can't get away from, because there's a lot of concentration of the wealth and who's dictating where things are going. But I want to ask you: is there any metric in particular that you just find in particularly just problematic, whether it's like way too easy to game, or it's like it's way too just difficult to get a handle on? All right, guys, we just had an awesome interview with John. It was fantastic. We talked a little bit about data. And if you're interested more in that interview and that discussion, we had a full hour-long talk, which you can find on our channel and in the description right after this video is concluded, and finish the conversation there. We get into deeper dives. I give my spicy take on what metric I hate, and maybe it was invented by somebody that you also find a little irritating. We also talk about how crypto data can improve. What are some awesome crypto resources that you could use right now to better improve your due diligence on crypto data, as well as who do we think would make the best crypto biopic movie if Hollywood were to make one? Find out our answers in that long video. I got a very familiar answer to that. I'll just put it that way. But that was the interview. Please go check out the full one. Great talk with Jan there. Also, I want to just have you guys check out real quick. The Block just opened up a new product line called the Block Daily. You can get all their good data research journalism all for a new package. You can check it out there. Go to their website, theblockcrypto.com, and check out all the goodness they got to offer, guys. Information is your friend. Never turn down more information, and that's what we need in crypto, to sort the salt from the spice. So anyway, guys, looks like we had a great time in the chat. We have people, wow, everyone, I've never seen so much love for a guest. We have so much love going on for John Dantoni. Everyone give it up for John. Wonderful guy, big heart, big peppers. Awesome stuff. What do we got? We have John is very cute. John is very smart. Wow. Like all these compliments. Great stuff. Everybody really loving the Juul and the vaping that John was doing. So anyway, guys, this was CoinSpice Live. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. You go down the description. Make sure to hit us on Twitter, Telegram, Instagram, everything. Subscribe to our email newsletter so you can get exclusive content we're not publishing anywhere else except that email. Do all that, and everybody, stay spicy.